All right, let's jump right in. My name's Valerie Garcia. I'm really excited to share this session with you this morning. It's one that's really near and dear to my heart. If you are one of those folks that struggles at all with marketing, I think this will be definitely something that will be beneficial to you. I am a marketer now by trade, basically, but I have been teaching in real estate for about 20 years. And I've just kind of learned some of these lessons as I've gone along, and I'm hoping to pass some of them along to you today. The reason why this session is called the Modern Campfire is because from the beginning of time, we share stories and ideas around campfires. This is really something that we can all relate to. If you ever went to summer camp, do we have any people who went to summer camp in the room? Yeah, best times of our lives, right? You know, stories were when we would sit around the campfire, we would lean in, we would share information with each other that we would remember. And that's really the idea behind marketing. A lot of us, when we come into this industry, we are taught incorrectly how to market ourselves. We're taught to share information about ourselves from a very me standpoint. And today I want to share with you the way that stories can change the way you talk to your customers about your customers and how that will ultimately change your business. It's about laughing, it's about crying and creating moments that people are going to remember, and ultimately that's what we want. So we're going to start out with why stories. I'm going to kind of share with you why stories are important. What impact do they have on our businesses and on our customers and on the opportunity for us to be memorable and remarkable. But first I want to insert just kind of a little bit of a personal message here. I have worked in the industry for a very long time, and I have been in that place where you have been. All of you have been in that place where you wake up and you think, what am I going to write to my people? What am I going to put on social media? And what am I going to put in my newsletter? And it's that constant pressure of having to come up with something to say. Has anybody ever been there and felt that? And then I started realizing that it's not just about having something to say. It's, I want to have something to share with my people. I want them to feel like I've shared something of importance with them. And I started embracing the idea of storytelling, and it has absolutely changed the way I market. I'm going to share with you some of the things that I do today and how it's changed not only my open rates and my ROI, but it's absolutely changed the relationships with my clients. And I want to give you some really tangible ideas on how to start doing that and show you how it's worked for me, and even give you some of the tools that I use. So I don't want content to be a chore for you. And I know as you go through the next couple of days, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to try and sell you stuff that's going to automate your content. And I really want to try and cut them off at the pass and show you, you have stories to tell, and you have ways to reach your clients that are going to touch their hearts. So I've shared with you here on this slide the 10 commandments of a great content creative strategy. So for those of you who are creating content and you want that top 10 list right up front, there you go, take a picture, you're welcome. But what I really want to focus on today is not those 10. I want to focus on the one that we don't talk about enough, and that is inspiration. A lot of us, we can find tools and classes on how to target our audience and how to be consistent and you know, how to have our content specific to our market. But what I really want to talk to you about today is the hardest thing to do in marketing, which is to inspire people. It is the toughest thing to do because it actually requires us to be a little vulnerable, a little emotional. We have to put our feel pants on. So I'm going to show you some ways to do that today. I know that when we start out in this industry, a lot of us are told that the goal of marketing in real estate is to be top of mind. I actually kind of hate that expression because the reality is it's not enough for people to remember you. People could remember you all day long. But the idea behind creating a customer is for that customer to go and create more customers. And so it's not enough for you to be memorable. You have to be remarkable. People have to be able to tell other people about you for it to work. That's the whole idea behind repeat and referral business. And so it's not just about being top of mind. It's giving somebody something to say, oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe this. And so that's really where stories come in. And the idea of telling stories in our marketing, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about what make great stories and some of the places where stories can come from. But the idea is this: when we tell stories, people listen. They sit up, they lean in, they pay attention, they stop scrolling. And the really great stories are when people go, yes, me too. And those are the kind of stories I want you to share in your marketing. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing all of the other regular stuff that we do, but I want you to start peppering your content with stuff that means something to somebody. Great stories do a couple of things, but the most important thing that storytelling does in our marketing is it compels people to feel something. If we think back to some of the really great commercials that we've watched, those videos that have gone viral, the stuff that we share, those things around the holidays, videos of soldiers coming home, all of those are things that we share, we engage with because they make us feel. And so the number one thing that our goal is as marketers is to get people to change the way that they feel. Because if we can change the way that they feel, we can then change the way that they think. And if we can change what happens up in their brains, we can actually change the way they act and ultimately change their habits, which is just a pattern of behavior. And that is what makes marketing amazing. That's where the ROI really is when people go, oh, I read that, I remember that. It changed something in the way that I do something. And that's really the whole idea behind really great stories. There's a couple other things, and that is, as adults, we learn differently as when we were children. Do you remember when you were a kid and your brain was empty and like all that soaked in, but now you meet somebody and 2 minutes later you're still talking to them and you're like, oh my God, I don't remember their name from 2 minutes ago? Our brains get a little full as we get older, and we learn differently, as much as we hate to admit it. And so a couple of things about how adults learn. The first one is we're results oriented as adults. We get to the point where there has to be an instant benefit for us or an immediate action for us to say that information is valuable. And so when you're talking to your customers, to your clients, immediately they're looking at it through the filter of, is this something I can use right now? Is this going to solve a problem? And so as you go through your marketing, these are things you have to think about. Is this something where somebody's going to go, oh yeah, I can use that? It's immediate and it's instantaneous. The second way that adults learn, different from children, is that we structure the way we take in information based on wants versus needs. I used to do training for a very large franchise group, about 17,000 agents, and we would send a survey out every single year with 25 topics on it, and we would say, what do you most want to learn this year? It was really interesting because every single year, no matter how many thousands of people filled it out, the top 3 things were always the top 3 things, and the bottom 3 were always the same. Except the bottom 3 were the things they needed the most, like budgeting and finance and systems and time management. And the top 3 were always the things they needed the least. But we, as adults, we want the things that we don't necessarily need. And so we have to have a balance between the two in our marketing and make sure people get what they need and what they want. I usually refer to this as hiding the vegetables in the brownies. So we want to give them a little bit of both, right? We want them to feel like they're getting what they want, but really they're getting what they need. The third way that adults learn, we're self-directed. Nobody's usually, other than continuing education credits, nobody's saying you have to sit down and learn this. So as we're directing ourselves through education, we're saying, are these steps practical and immediately applicable to us? And they give us multiple options. Can I read this? Can I watch a video? Can I take this information in online? Or can I watch a recording on my own time? And so we have to remember in our marketing that we have to give people options. Not everybody wants to watch a 12-minute video on how to stage your home. In fact, nobody wants to watch a 12-minute video on how to stage your home. I can pretty much tell you that for sure. And so we need to give people options. You can click and you can read the blog, or you can click and watch the video, or you can take this information in differently. But overall, we have to give them options. The fourth way that adults learn that are different from children is that we learn by choice. Again, no one's forcing us to be here. Learning is voluntary. So you've got to find a way to motivate us. You've got to find a way to get us to look at some information. So in your marketing, as you're reaching out to your customers, are you saying, hey, this is something that's going to interest you, and here's why? We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But you've got to really sort of draw them in. And the fifth way that people learn, that adults learn, that's different from children, is that we're resistant to change. Oh yes, this is a big one. We do not like it. The older we get, the more set in our ways we are, and it is really difficult to change us. And so as we're speaking to our adult clients, especially our baby boomer clients and even older, we have to focus on the result rather than on the motivation. If your phone rings, I'm going to make you stand up and tell a joke. And I only know one joke, and it's not clean, so hopefully my phone doesn't ring. So you've got to find the why in your marketing. You've got to make sure that you're reaching out to them and saying, hey, this is why this matters to you, so that we can pull them out of that, I don't like to change things. One of the most effective ways to teach adults who are resistant to change, or to reach your clients who are resistant to change, is to attach new concepts to old ones. So, hey, you used to do it like this. This is just the new version of that. And typically they're like, oh, okay, I can understand that because the old version, I totally get it. It's like when I was teaching my mom how to use Twitter. Like, Mom, this is like when you used to pick up the party line. Oh, All right. We didn't get to hashtags, but we will. Last way that adults learn that are different from children is we draw on personal experiences. This is the most important and most impactful way that you can reach adults and get them to consume information and do something with it, is we draw on something that they're already familiar with. So focusing on storytelling and discussion and real life examples. And so how this directly applies to your marketing is if you can get somebody to go, I remember feeling like that. I've done that before. I've been there. I understand that feeling. Immediately now, your marketing has more of an impact than if somebody's sitting there going, I have absolutely no understanding of how to relate to this. So when you remember those 5 ways that adults learn, you immediately now start to look at your marketing differently and say, am I telling stories? Am I making them feel something? Am I solving problems and giving them options? And when we do that, immediately we're already more effective. I want to talk a little bit about the idea of storytelling. Currently, right now, on LinkedIn, there's 550,000 people with storytelling in their title. 500,000 people who are storytellers. I loved this quote. The great thing about the internet is it gave everybody a voice. The really sucky thing about the internet is it gave everybody a voice. And then the marketers ruined everything. Because when we first started getting email, it was fun, right? You got mail, ding, awesome, right? When we first started stalking all of our exes on Yahoo Messenger and whatever, like it was fun. And then all of a sudden the ads started happening and the pop-ups and it got really loud and really noisy. And the internet actually got to a point where there was so much noise that we just kind of stopped listening altogether. And so to reach our audience these days, especially online, takes a ton more work. And what most of us are taught, which is incorrect, is that we just need to throw more content at them. Just do more. Throw more stuff out there. Create more. Do it more often. Touch points. All of those things. But the reality is that's not how we stand out from the noise. 95% of content misses its mark. Fails to connect with people. We know this. We open our mailboxes. 95% of the junk that's in there goes straight into the recycle bin. And it's the same with our emails. We open our email every day, and 95% of the stuff that's in there is swipe, delete, swipe, delete, swipe, delete. Unless you're one of those weirdos with 12,000 unopened emails because you just leave them all in there. In which case, you need a class on how to inbox zero. The thing is that our audiences are out there. They're still there. They're waiting to connect with us. But we have to really know our audience in order to reach them these days. We have to actually really study them and understand who they are. What do they struggle with? And what are their questions? And what do they hope for? Because if our content is about us, we're going to miss the mark. Our content has to be about our audience. Your customers don't need more content. No matter what anybody tells you, especially those automated marketer guys who are going to tell you just sign up and set it and forget it. It's like Instant Pot for social media. They don't need that. What your customers need is for you to help them. And people are starting to get this message. And the people who are telling stories and are putting emotion into their marketing are finding that they are hitting the mark far more often than anyone else. So in a world where everybody's a storyteller, and there's very few stories that are worth listening to, everybody's putting storyteller in their title, but they're not actually hitting the mark. This was a really great quote from Brian Solis, who said, information becomes currency, relevance becomes the new viral, and utility is the new experience. It's a lot of words, so I'm going to break it down for you in a really simple way, and this is the way I like to refer to it. And this is actually the entire recipe behind telling really great stories. Okay? You ready for it? It's this. When you tell a really great story, it's what, so what, now what. That's really all it is. That's the whole point behind really great marketing, is when somebody is reading your stuff, are they hearing, what do I need to know? So what? Why does it matter to me? And now what? What do I do with this information? Every story has a what, so what, now what. Every really great marketing piece, every great video, postcard, flyer, mailer, newsletter, whatever you're sending includes this really simple formula. Because if it was just what, it goes in the recycle bin. What is those flyers I get from that guy in my neighborhood who sends one out every single week because he bought 50,000 of them a year ago and he needs to get rid of them. And they're like a full-size in-sync poster-size flyer, and it's him with his thumbs. And he says, I'm number one. And I'm like, so what? Exactly. Now what? What do I do with this? It goes in the garbage every single week. It's not enough for you to just tell me what. I need to know what's next. The whole idea behind so what and now what is that it's not focused on you. It's that you're making your audience, your reader, your customer, you're making them the hero. You're thinking about their journey and how they travel the world every single day. You're asking what challenges do they face and what are their fears and what do they ask and where do they go for those answers? And how can you help them become the hero in their story? Those are the answers that are going to inspire really great stories in your marketing. Instead of doing that, though, most of us were taught from a really early age to do this. It took me exactly 30 seconds of Googling to find just those. This is how we were taught to storytell or market when we first started in the business. Offer something free and drag them in, right? But the reality is these days is that doesn't cut it. What's the story we're telling with these ads? It's about money. Nearly every single message that you're looking at is about money. Is that because we think that's what the customer wants? Or because we think it's effective? See, we're taught that that's the thing that's most important, but when we really dig into the stories, every single person in this room could tell the story of a client who's selling not because of money, but because their parents passed away, or because they're getting a divorce, or because they're having to move, or they're an empty nester, or something tragic, or something beautiful, or something wonderful happened. And we know that every single one of those stories tells us that our clients are motivated by far more than money. Those are the stories that we need to start talking about. And so, whoa. You didn't see any of that. And you can leave now. And so when we start thinking about, okay, great, Val, I totally get it. I want to tell better stories. I want my marketing to hit the mark. I want people to put their field pants on and get my stuff and not throw it away and call me. Where do I get started? The whole thing is you've got to have an idea. An idea, that's the hard thing, right? It's scary and tricky because where do ideas come from? But I want to break down for you what an idea is. It's really as simply as this. An idea is anything that can change how people see the world. And it could be really simple, and it could be really quiet, it could be really big and really loud. But if you can leave a little bit of your idea in somebody else's mind, just to the point where they go, I heard something interesting today. I read something interesting. Oh, I saw this, and I meant to tell you about it. You're leaving a gift in their mind. Now, I don't know about you, but when I go home and I have dinner at home with my spouse, it's always this competition because we both sort of live in an online space to come up with something that the other person hasn't already seen that day. Like, oh, I saw this thing. And then he's like, oh, yeah, I read that. And I'm like, oh, crap. And then I'm like, oh, I saw this thing. And he's like, no, really? And I'm like, yes, I win. Because when we are told something that's interesting to us as human beings, we immediately want to tell somebody else. That's human nature. And so when you are the source of something interesting and funny and creative and happy or sad, people want to share it. They're going to share your information. That's human nature. So where do ideas come from? If you can have that little bit of an idea that you can leave in somebody's heart or mind that's going to make them remember you but also remark about you, where do ideas come from? I'm going to give you some really simple examples. I get lots of ideas from photos. As human beings, we take in 60,000 times more information through our eyeballs than through any of our other senses. Our eyes are super important, and yet we don't use visuals as effectively as we could in our marketing. We don't use beautiful, curated images. A lot of us are still stealing crap off Google Images, which is wrong and illegal, in case you didn't know. I steal pictures off my sister's Instagram, which is less illegal. And not at all wrong, in case she asks. The picture that you're looking at right now, I challenge you a little bit. Who is this in the photo? As you're looking at it, you're already creating a story in your head. What is she doing? What is she feeling? What does it make you feel like? For many of you, you see a little girl. I've done this exercise in some classes where they say, I see a little girl who's waiting for child support or child services because her parents have died. They go dark immediately. I tend to go the other direction, but hey, whatever. What you're really looking at in this picture is my niece who lives next to a fire station. And every time the fire trucks go by, she thinks it's a parade. So she sits out there and waits for the fire trucks because it's a parade. And the story behind this for me, when I really thought about it was, you know, as adults, we get to the point where we see a fire truck and we think, oh, traffic. Or we think, oh, maybe, you know, something bad happened. But from a little kid's perspective, there was joy and excitement in something like that. And it kind of reminded me to always remember there's wonder, and other people see things through their own filter. And the same photo that means something to us could mean something completely different to someone else, in a good or a bad way. And so when you're stuck for ideas and you need one, start looking through some of the photos that make you smile. What was the lesson you took away from that? What was the story you created in your head? You're guaranteed going to be able to share those types of images and have your customers have emotional reactions. I also share a lot of photos of this woman. Now, I want to note that when you share stories of personal experience, they don't have to be super personal, they don't have to be super dramatic, but I tell you what, I could share articles on tech or social media in real estate all day long, but when I meet a stranger at an event like this and they come up to me and say, I follow you on social media, I guarantee you that most of them, if they do follow me, say, I love your grams. They remember those stories. This is my gram. She's 92. She has 2 boyfriends. She has a winter boyfriend and a summer boyfriend because she winters in Texas. And she says it's okay because all they do is make out. This woman is one of the wisest people in my life, and I love sharing the stories that she shares. She said to me the other day, she said, you know, life isn't about like the regular moments. Life is about the moments that blow your hair back and set your face on fire. You need to go looking for those as quickly as possible. I thought, I want to remember that for the rest of my life. And those are the things that when they happen to you and you think, I want to remember that for the rest of my life, it's okay to share those with your people. It's okay to share those on social media and in your newsletters and on your blogs because other people are going to relate to that. And when they meet you, they're not going to just see you as a realtor, they're going to see you as a human being. And that's what you want. And so think about personal experience. I also encourage you to think about community. The sense of community, the place that you live, the people that make up your community. And I understand fair housing and all of that. But the reality is that we still have tons of stories that we can share about why we live, where we live, and what it's like to live there. In my community, there's a big green space right in the middle of the square, and on Thursday mornings, they have free yoga. All the old ladies come and do yoga in the morning. And then on Thursday nights, there's a farmer's market, and on Friday nights, every summer, they set up a big giant screen, and you can bring your own popcorn and your own chair, and you can watch a movie under the stars, like Home Alone or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. There are always those really sappy, great movies that make us feel. Every single person and place and thing that you come across in your business has a story. And it could be just as simple as, hey, this is what happens across the street in the park in the summertime. There's emotion attached to that. People want to know what it's like to live there. Another great place to find stories are your customers. I'm going to show you a couple examples of that later. Every one of your customers has great stories. If you're ever stuck and you're door knocking or you're talking to a client, one of the best story starter questions is, what do you love most about living here? Or if you want, what do you hate most about living here? Guaranteed they are going to have an answer for that, and it's going to tell you a lot more than if you asked, when did you last update the bathroom? You can also get super technical. Your stories don't all have to be personal. I'm showing you a picture of Candyland because one of my favorite lessons for brand new baby agents that I teach is, you know what? Your value is not in telling people that you're number one. Your value is in telling your customers that throughout the entire process of buying or selling a home, it's going to feel a lot like this board game. You're going to have to get through all of those steps, and potentially you're going to have to go back a few steps, and things could go wrong, and you're going to have questions, and you're going to get the appraisal back, and then there's going to be a sign back, and then things are going to have to get fixed. But your role, your value as an agent is in every one of those steps to say, this is what I'm going to do when we get there. I'm going to hold your hand, I'm going to answer your questions, I'm going to negotiate for you, I'm going to help you. And so when you sit down in your buyer presentations or your listing presentations and you talk about Candyland, you narrate the process, you tell the story of what can and will and probably is going to go wrong and what you're going to do in that process, not only do they have a better understanding of what it's going to take to get to the end, but they're far less likely to say, so what do you get paid for? It's a really important story that we need to be telling. Last, but definitely not least, well, maybe a little least, note that I didn't put this first, is houses. It's really easy for us to be like, hey, I just listed a house. Hey, I have an open house, picture of the front of the house, done. Content for the day. What you're looking at right there is a picture of the house my sister just closed on 3 weeks ago. It's her dream house. Super excited. Yeah. She moved there so that she can do goat yoga classes in her backyard. Everybody's got a dream, you know? 2 days after they moved in, this was the picture. She took a picture of the rainbow over her house, and you know, she's very excited. We're all very excited for her. You know, there's stories there. There's stories of why you want to live there and what your dreams are for that place. It's not just about saying great kitchen for entertaining. It's about saying this kitchen has seen 612 meals of grandma's best mac and cheese recipe devoured around this, you know, this table. There's stories in every single home. It's not about just saying, hey, I have a listing. I want to stress here at this point, you don't have to be super creative to tell good stories. You just have to pay attention. You've got to listen to what other people are saying, and you've got to look for those details, and you've got to think, hey, what's the thing that made me feel? I bet that would make other people feel too. Stories are everywhere if you follow that recipe. Every time you sit down to write something, to post something, to create something, to email something, ask yourself, am I including what, so what, now what? Or am I just including what? Am I just saying, hey, by the way, I need to have this paper signed back by Tuesday? Or am I saying, hey, I need to have this paper signed back by Tuesday. Oh, by the way, here's a couple other things you might want to know. Here's why. Just wanted to pass that along while I was thinking about it. There's a feeling there. There's an emotion where we go a little bit further. So how do we start bringing some of these ideas to life? So we've got the idea that ideas are great and they stick in people's minds, and we want to give people options and draw them close and make them feel so we can change the way that they behave. And that's great. So you've got some of those stories. Some of you, as you were listening to some of those, were probably thinking, yeah, I can think of some of those times. I can think of some of those customers. So how do we bring those to life? I want to give you some really tangible examples that are going to help you start to do that. The first thing is that once you have ideas, you've got to start turning them into something else. Most of us, we sit down, we click on that box at the top of Facebook, we look at it for a minute, we type a few things, we hit post, and we walk away. But I would encourage you, as you start to think about formatting your marketing like a story, like storytelling, that you have a space where you allow yourself to be a little more creative, and you allow yourself to hold some of those ideas for a little bit and work on them a little bit before you get there. Make time to create. Sit down every once in a while and think, what are some of the stories I want to tell in the coming season? What are some of the ones I want to have in my back pocket for those days where I really want to share a story with somebody? And then brainstorm them. And the idea behind brainstorming, as I put on here, is to create a whole lot of ideas without critique or perfection. Critique and perfection is what holds us back from ever hitting the button on a lot of our ideas, because we think, I'm not ready yet, it's not perfect. But if it's not perfect and we're waiting for it to be perfect, we will never do anything. Because newsflash, it's never going to be perfect. We've got to do it before we're ready. And so I have this is an exact screenshot of the bottom of my laptop, and I have two folders in the very bottom corner on my laptop, and one of them is pictures that have spoken to me that I want to use at some point in some way, and one of them is new stuff. I'm super creative in the way I title my folders. And in that new stuff folder are articles and links and stories that other people are telling, and maybe music that I heard, and I just chuck that stuff in there whenever I see it. And I think, you know what? One day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to want to share something, and I'm going to be stuck. I'm not going to have any ideas. I'm going to open those folders and I'm going to look at them, and I'm going to see all the pictures of my nieces that I stole off my sister's Instagram. And I'm going to be like, that one spoke to me today. That's the one that made me feel something. And so I'm going to share the lesson that came along with that for me. So allowing yourself to be creative and having a storage space of all of that stuff. I also want to share with you, as you start to put these together, there's a couple really important steps in the writing process. And we're not going to go through the whole how to write lesson today, but I wanted to point out 3 of these for you. There's a really great writer named Ann Handley, and she's brilliant on teaching people how to write. And she writes this GPS of the 12 ways to actually write something. And number 2 is reframe what you're writing in what's in it for me. We've all heard this, right? Our clients are thinking, what's the with them? What's in it for me? And I would challenge you to think about this a little bit differently. I put there in orange, which doesn't work as an actual, you can't pronounce that. But I think what our customers are really thinking is, tell me why I should care. Not what's in it for me, tell me why I should care. It's, you know, it's just a longer version of so what, but the reality is that we want to care. We want people to make us care. There's so much noise and so much confusion out there. We want people to say, here's why you should care, and then we actually want to care. Number 5 is write to one person. If you're trying to create a story that's going to touch or speak to every single person in your sphere or every single person that reads your newsletter, you will fail because you can't. So think of that one person. Think of one person and speak to that person. Because chances are, if you're real and human and you're speaking to a real human, lots of other real humans are going to be like, I feel that way too. I totally get that. And number 6, this is also super important, is the ugly first draft. A lot of times we skip this process. We're like, good enough, send. And I'm not saying wait for perfect. I'm saying it's okay sometimes to write something that's not great, walk away from it, and come back and edit. It's okay to create the ugly first draft. In fact, it's magic happens there sometimes. Then we have the editing process. You have some great ideas, you go back, you write that ugly first draft, and then editing comes around. And whether you're creating a keynote that you're going to deliver on stage, or a newsletter that you're going to send to your customers, or whatever it is that you're going to post on social media, it doesn't matter what format that you're using. Editing is not about keeping all of your ideas and then just saying less about them. I worked with somebody the other day that was putting a keynote together, and I said, how long do you have? And he said, 40 minutes. And I said, what do you got? And he's got, I have 28 points. And I said, what's your plan for that? And he says, I'm just going to talk really fast. I said, how about 3 and really good points, and you're allowed to breathe? Sometimes we try and pack everything in. We have no white space. We send out newsletters with billions of things in them. We get flyers in the mail with all kinds of stats. But imagine if you narrowed it down to a few that were really important. In the writing world, we call that killing your darlings. There are things that we just love. I love that idea. I just want to share it so much. Somebody's really going to love that. That's great. I don't have any room for it. I'll make room. Sometimes you got to kill off your darlings to make sure that the stuff that hits the mark is there and gets the attention and the space that it deserves. And you also want your customers to feel like they're allowed to breathe when they're consuming your information too. There's a couple elements of a really great story as you start to put these ideas together and you start to figure out in what format is this going to work best. We want characters that we can cheer for and lessons that we can relate to. There has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end, and gosh, the end is hard. So sometimes we have to write the end first. The end is that line that wraps it all up and tells people what you want them to take away or what you want them to learn from it. And most of us, we do it wrong. We start with the title. I don't know about you, but I've written a lot of books where it was one title and no pages. It's a really sexy title. That's totally going to sell. I have nothing else. The ending is the hard part. So start with the end. Know what you want them to learn. You want to include curiosity and possibility and wonder. We strip wonder out of our marketing a lot of times, but imagine if we could include wonder more often. We want connection. We want people to feel something and be connected to us. This also applies to your brand story. So not just personal stories, not just marketing, but also who are you as a business? Each and every one of you is running a business. And so who is that business? People don't connect to brands, they connect to people. And so who is the person behind that brand? And what do you want people to say about you when you're not in the room? That's your brand. And so how do you format that story? And I know this looks like a really strange question to ask you, but here's the thing. We are told in this business that if we want to succeed, we have to be better than our competition, but that's wrong. You just have to be different. And so as you're telling your brand story, the first question I want you to ask yourself is, what makes you weird? I was working with a team the other day, and we were rewriting their bio, and I gave them a list of 100 words, and I said, I want you to pull out the words that are most applicable to you and the words that are least. And the very first word they picked out is, we're not that, was weird. And I said, why? And they said, because we're not weird. That's terrible. It's bad. And I'm like, no, weird can be amazing. Weird means unique and special and different. And as Sally Hogshead says, different is better than better. So if you're struggling with how to tell your brand story or update your website, your About Me section, or write yourself a professional bio that draws people in, ask yourself, what makes you weird? What are you willing to do that your competition isn't? And then start asking yourself, who is your customer? What do they want? What do they need? What are their problems? And how can you help them? A lot of times, again, we start from the place of, I'm number one, I'm great, I work with an awesome brand, I'm going to get you the most money in the least amount of time possible. They don't care. Are you going to hold their hand? Are you going to negotiate for them? Are you going to take the stress out of it? Are you going to understand when they cry at the closing table? All of that's important. I went to a workshop a couple of weeks ago with these two handsome gentlemen. You may recognize them. You may recognize the guy on the left, Robbie, Kid President. On the right-hand side is his brother, Brad, who's actually the co-creator of Kid President. And Brad is a hilarious human being. You think Robbie's funny? Brad you'll pee your pants. He's so funny. He does a lot of classes with elementary school, or does a lot of lessons with elementary school classes. He comes in and he sits with the kids and talks about wonder and ideas and creation and obviously kindness and treating other humans like humans, which is great. We need more of that in our adult world these days. But he does this amazing session where he sits down and he puts everybody in the class in a circle. And if you're really stuck for a brand story, I would really challenge you to do this exercise that he does with third graders. And it's this. He sits down in a group of third graders and he says to everybody, I wonder who we can help. And then he's just quiet. And they start looking around and then one person goes, we could help Miss Smith, always the teacher, right? And then they brainstorm and they get all excited and they start throwing ideas out like Santa Claus and Easter Bunny. And ultimately, he says, always they narrow it down to like one kid in the class who they all sense could use a little help. And then he says, I wonder, what is the most amazing thing that we could do for them? And they look at each other, and their eyes get all big, and they start throwing out ideas like hot air balloons and big Kit Kat bars and all of those things that kids think are amazing. And then he says, I wonder who would help us. And they think, oh, we need a grown-up. And then they pick somebody, and by the end of this exercise, they have this great idea of how they can change somebody's life in a really simple way, and they've already narrowed down who's going to be able to help them. So imagine if you sat with your team, or even just by yourself, and you looked at your customers and you thought, I wonder who I could help. I wonder what would be the most amazing thing I could do for them. I wonder who could help me. Think of that exercise from a standpoint of looking at your marketing differently, looking at your customers like someone that you could change their life in a really simple and fun way. Most importantly, when you're talking about your brand story, is you can't just say all the words, you have to do all the things. You have to live the story that you tell, because ultimately that's what's going to make you remarkable. And then you have to implement, and this is where I'm going to give you some really tactical stuff that you can take pictures of so you can leave and put them in your folders and say, I took notes. Because it's not just about the idea of storytelling and the feeling, you actually have to then put it in practice. So Facebook, obviously I'm going to start there because that's everybody's favorite love to hate it social media site. When you start telling stories on Facebook, it's not enough to just write something and hit send. You've got to think about it. Images, you've got to include images. You have to include text. Even better, put your text over top of your images. I'm going to give you some tools to do that in a little bit. The thing about telling stories also on Facebook is you've got to have consistency. It's not like, hey, I'm just going to pop in once every 3 weeks and I'm going to write something. You've got to be there all the time. You have to not only be there to post, but you've got to connect with people and you have to comment and reply on the stuff that they write on your stuff. You've got to find yourself a pattern because your people are going to learn to expect it. I post every single morning at 7:30. The people that follow me, they know that every single day at 7:30 you're going to get something. Happy, sad, weird, picture I stole off Instagram of my sister's kids. You're sensing a pattern there. I have 52 nieces and nephews. It's a really big pool of stuff, right? Yeah. So, but timing is also important. It's not just pattern, but you've got to know when your people are awake. My people that follow me on social media are realtors, so I post for y'all at 7:30 in the morning or 10 at night. But I know my audience, and you've got to know your audience too, so understand your timing. But also, every single time you post something for the purpose of creating communication or relationship building or conversation on Facebook, you've got to be asking yourself, is there a what, so what, now what? Have I given them a link or information on where to go next and what to do with the information or what they should care about or what's the lesson they should take away? Instagram, everybody's next favorite. you've got to understand, what is your strategy? My strategy is post pictures of pretty things and food. So if you want to follow me there, that's what you're going to see. I don't use Instagram for the purpose of generating leads. I use it for the purpose of, hey, let's look at pretty things and food. Works for me. Everybody's got to understand who is your audience. Again, timing is super important. Hashtags are super important. If you're not taking the time to learn what are the best processes for those, you aren't necessarily going to get the engagement that you want on there. But if you're using it for the purpose of storytelling and you're using the right hashtags and you're including the stuff that's going to draw people in, you're going to reach an audience. They're going to find you. Twitter, everyone's favorite cesspool. The first question I would ask you about Twitter at this point is, are these your people and is this your space? Because it's not for everybody. It's not like it used to be. Twitter has changed. And so you really do have to have a really frequent strategy if you're going to be telling stories. But more than frequency, I would encourage you to include other people. The key to telling really good stories and using Twitter for it is tagging in people. You'll see here, this is a picture that I took on a plane. I basically live on a plane, and I was on this flight on September 18th. You can see there, and I tagged American Airlines, and I said, your staff member took a minute to make a fussy baby smile on flight 1338 to B&E tonight. Love flying with you guys. Now, I yell at airlines a lot on Twitter. In fact, I joined Twitter to yell at airlines. But I also like to make sure that when somebody does something good, I tell the story of that. It's equally as important. Also, I get upgrades. But you see here, they replied. That's pretty awesome. We're going to share this with our team. You know what? Every one of us wants to feel like we made a difference. And that baby cried for like 30 minutes straight on that flight until that guy stopped and made funny faces at it. And everyone was just like, you're the best in the whole world for making that baby stop crying. Tell those stories. That made me feel something. I wanted them to feel what that felt like from a customer standpoint. How much would you love it if your customer posted something like that? For those of you that are blogging, a couple of things. Creating a body of work is super important these days. It's not enough to just drip pieces out on social media or have little pieces of things everywhere. You have to have a body of work that you own, that is not owned by Facebook, that has a place where you can go and send people for more information. It's a really important thing. And I know some people are like, I hate blogs, but a blog is literally just a page on your website where you can go in and write a little story and hit send. Think of it as Facebook, all right, on your website. But now it lives there forever, and you own it. And there isn't an algorithm that decides who sees it. So you get to use that link and put it wherever you want. You can refer people back to it. The most important thing about blogging is that consistency of voice. When people meet you, you want them to be like, you're exactly what I expected. You don't want them to be like, you're nothing like I expected, get out of my house. Right? So be yourself. Include links. Create that body of work. Speaking of websites, for those of you that have them, websites are increasingly becoming a place where you can create content that matters and tell stories. They're not necessarily a place where people are going to go and search for houses for sale. There are sites for that. This is a place where you get to go and tell stories. What you're looking at, and I've put the link across the bottom there, is just a quick screenshot from a friend of mine who runs a site called Move to NOLA, N-O-L-A, which is New Orleans. And she does a photo shoot with every one of her buyer clients in the house after they're closing. And she takes those pictures and puts them on her website and tells their story. Now, I know you have clients sometimes that are like, ooh, that's creepy and I don't want that. But you don't have to show their faces. You could take a picture of their dog or their feet all around their welcome mat. There's creative ways to do that. But imagine if now I'm thinking about using your team to sell my house and I go into your website and I see that you have crafted the story of everyone that you've helped. That's so much more impactful than a bunch of people's quotes that say they were very professional and I would definitely recommend them. Think about stories about your clients and community and lifestyles. You don't necessarily have to tell the stories of your clients. Imagine if each one of those was the stories of a different city block or a different neighborhood or a different park. There's lots of stories out there. For those of you that are doing print marketing, whether it's your professional bio or you're writing white papers or client case studies or downloads or postcards or flyers or whatever it is in print, think about where the story comes in, and particularly your professional bio. For those of you whose professional bio starts out, Lisa is a realtor who has worked in the Laguna Hills area for 18 years, you can do better. I'm giving you an example there. Rewrote a bio for a friend of mine. Tells you a lot when you read that. Born in El Salvador, Inmar moved to California when he was 6 years old, and that experience has shaped the way he serves each and every one of his clients. It goes on from there to say he's an agent that's been selling for 13 years in that neighborhood and all that regular stuff. But that little story that he included told people, I feel like he's going to be empathetic. I feel like he's going to understand me. I feel like there's going to be something there. Email and newsletters, my favorite thing. I send a newsletter out once a month. If you get it, hopefully you love it. I ascribe to the idea that my newsletters need to be less news and more letter. And so I call them my love letters to my people. And so everybody in my mailing list that gets my love letter once a month doesn't get a whole bunch of like, hey, this is me, you should hire me, I'm amazing. They get, let me tell you these stories about the people I saw in the airport last week, and let me tell you the stories of all the great books I've read and all the things that I've done and the places that I've gone, and let me tell you some of the lessons that I've learned, and this one thing that I wrote down at this conference last week and I circled 3 times. I share with people the things that touch my heart. And I can tell you what, it sounds a little crazy, but it works. I send newsletters out to about 12,000 people every single month, and I have a 62% open rate, which is insane, people. Like, and it's not business. It's not news. It's a letter. It's the same thing that I would write and put a stamp on and put in the mail. And so think about that. For those of you that are sending stuff out to your people, is it an automatic drip that says, here are the rates and here's the information and the days on market are this? That's great. Could you add to that? Absolutely. For those of you that are brave and are getting in front of cameras and doing videos, that's awesome. For those of you that still hate them, do them anyway. When it comes to videos, it's a great opportunity for you to share stories that make you smile, or make you cry, or make you feel. It's great for you to talk about the status of the market, or even this great house that you're walking through, but is this an opportunity for you to interact with somebody on an emotional level? What about presentations? Even though you may not get on stages like this and do keynotes, which is not scary at all, by the way. We need better, more speakers in this industry, so if you have a story to tell, you should be up here next year. Start with some of these. Podcasts and interviews and panels and webinars, live demos, case studies, PR opportunities. There are so many of them in this industry. There are so many people looking for people to tell the stories of what's happening in our industry. Look for those opportunities and share your stories. When you get stuck and you think, what would I ever say? What would I say if I got on a panel? What would I say if I had a microphone? You would tell the stories of your people and the things that you've learned and the big mistakes that you made and why you don't spend the money on that anymore. All of that's important. What about leadership? One of the most important places that we should be telling stories. For those of you that are leading teams in the room, or you're brokers, owners, CEOs, leaders of people, the very best place that you can tell a story is to get people in line behind your North Star vision so everybody's pointing the same direction. Do you know how to put that in a story? Do you know how to put that in what, so what, now what? Or are you just telling your people what? Makes a really big difference in how people follow you and the impact that you have on others. As you start to look at some of those and you've written down some of those ideas and taken some of those examples away, this is something I would really encourage you to ask yourself. What is the shortest way to tell this story? Because when you get to your 360 character bio in Twitter, and you have to put everything about who you are in that many characters, or when you are writing a tweet, or you only have so much space, you will have to shorten. It's like when I get home at night and I say to my husband, bullet points. I don't need the whole story, right? There are times where you need to shorten. You need to be able to tell that story in the shortest way possible, because you can always expand and use more words. What can you tell people in a really short period of time? So I'm going to share with you some of my favorite tools and resources before I let you go today. How do I do this? I create content for tons of clients, big name brands, little tiny companies. I create a ton of content for myself. There's a couple of things over the years that I've literally fallen in love with. These are tools that I could not live without, and I wanted to share them with you. Don't tell anybody about them. So if you are struggling for photos and you are still stealing stuff off Google Images, Here's your slide for you. A couple of things on here. Unsplash, Pexels, Negative Space, Pic Jumbo. Those are all really great, beautiful, high-res, totally free, you will not get sued websites. And then there's Blend Images. And the reason why I include Blend Images on here is because I believe very strongly that we do not do a very good job in our industry of including stock photos that are not just white people. And so that site includes, and that's a screenshot from that site, that includes diversity. That site has beautiful pictures of people that don't all look like white guys in canoes. Did you know that only white guys canoe? According to stock photos, that's the case. And I think that doesn't reflect our clientele. That doesn't reflect the neighborhoods that we live in, and that does not reflect 2018. So I would encourage you to check that site out as well and start using images that are a little more diverse. So that was my soapbox for the day. Also, a couple of sites for design. So once you have those really beautiful images, what do you do with them? For those of you that are designing your own templates for your websites or your newsletters, or you're just including really great images on your social media sites, Canva and PicMonkey are the two sites I absolutely could not live without. 100% if they went down, I would just give up, crawl in a hole and die. It's dramatic, I know, but it's true. Canva will offer you thousands and thousands and thousands of templates for postcards and flyers and newsletters and whatever you need. If you are not creative and you don't know what fonts go with what and what colors go with what, use Canva. If you are looking to edit a photo quickly, add some text over top of it, maybe collage some photos together, PicMonkey will be your new best friend. PicMonkey is called that because it's so easy, a monkey could do it. What I love about PicMonkey and Canva are both desktop as well as apps. They are both free. Absolutely, totally free, and they allow you to create your own sort of branding style in there, so you can choose the same font over and over again, so you have some opportunities there. So if you are a little bit stuck with how to create some of the stuff, everything that I've created on this slide deck today was created in Canva. So it's pretty versatile. Another sort of insider tip here, and I really wish to God I had invented these, because I can't tell you how many people have bought these because I have told them about them. If you get stuck and you're looking to tell your brand story, or you want to rewrite your bio, or you just want to have a better way to talk about your company, buy a deck of these. They're like 20 bucks. Go to branding.cards. 20 bucks, and it's a game. It's actually a card game, and there's a whole bunch of words on them, and you can sit down with your team or by yourself, and you basically flip over the ones that you think describe your brand, and you eliminate the ones that don't, and they give you some really great words that you can start using instead of the same words you use all the time. Like, I'm a professional that's worked in Laguna Beach for 18 years. It'll give you some vocabulary. One of the hardest struggles that we have is to talk about ourselves without using our job title. Like if I said to you, what do you do, but you can't use the word realtor, we struggle. But you are community builders, and you are servants, and you are helpers, and you are, you're creatives, and you're all kinds of things. So these decks will really help you, and again, it's a really helpful tool, even just to change up the vocabulary on the way that you write your copywriting sometimes. Also on the topic of brand story, I love this tool. If you want some templates on how to tell a better story, you can go to StoryBrand or buildingastorybrand.com. They have a great blog. They have a podcast that's amazing with like the smartest people in the whole world, sharing everything they know about business. But they have some great downloadable tools like the one you're looking at here that will help you craft your own brand story. So we are this, and these are the people that we help, and these are the things that we do, and the way that we operate our business. And so if you want to get better at telling your brand story, and when people meet you saying something other than I'm a realtor, this will really help you kind of get the juices flowing there. I also wanted to give you a couple of ways that I kind of have learned to tell really great stories. Whether or not you are a writer or a speaker, I would challenge you to think that every single one of you writes every day. You all text, you all email, you all create stuff. And whether or not you're getting on stages or not, you speak in front of people, even if it's at kitchen tables. And so both of these books have really changed the way that I look at writing and speaking. Ann Handley's handbook on Everybody Writes it's phenomenal on just how to be a better writer. And TED Talks is Chris Anderson telling the story of how he invented TED Talks and what makes a great talk, and how to structure a story, and how not to tell a story, and how to tell a personal story without it being too personal. So there's lots of good stuff in there if you're into that sort of thing. One of the last things I want to kind of give you as far as resources is have a place to organize your stuff. create that folder on your desktop. I use Evernote as well. If you're not an Evernote fan, it's not too late. Evernote is an amazing free tool that will allow you to create folders. The nice thing about Evernote is that it also has voice memos. So I can go into Evernote and just hit the button and I can talk, and then it will record my memo so I can go back when I'm like, you know, when you have those ideas and you're like, I got to remember this right now, or yeah, I tend to be more like, I'm totally going to remember this. And then like 5 minutes later, it's completely gone. So having those places to put things. I'm also a huge Pinterest user, and not to plan weddings, because I know everybody thinks that's all Pinterest is for, but I have a lot of like private boards in Pinterest that no one can see, and Pinterest is great because you can actually just save stuff in there. So if I see an article that I love and I want to share that later, I just pin it into there. If I have a photo, I just pin it. And so everything kind of lives in those two places. So when I want to go back and find ideas, or I want to work them out, but I've also included that photo to remind you that you don't have to have anything fancy. I have a separate notebook. I have it in my bag right now. It's just a plain lined notebook, and I have a bazillion ideas in there. And so I go back and I look through that notebook when I need ideas. So a couple of next steps. I'm a big fan of giving you some homework. So I want to give you a couple of next steps of giving you a ton of information. I know I talk super fast, but I have 14 brothers and sisters, so you talk fast and eat fast. Right? So next steps. What am I going to leave you with here? I want to leave you with this quote and then a couple of pieces of homework. This is a quote from Stephen Denning. He says, "Time after time, when faced with the task of persuading others to get enthusiastic about something," his original quote said, "change." To get enthusiastic about change. Storytelling was the only thing that worked. You guys know this. When you sit down at kitchen tables and somebody's like, I don't know if I'm ready to sell or buy, like it's scary, I don't know what to do, it all feels really big. You immediately launch into, let me tell you about a time that I was there, or let me tell you about a client who was there too. You do this innately. You know this process. All you need to do is start moving that from the face-to-face into your marketing, and start understanding that any time that you need to persuade somebody to get enthusiastic about something that's hard or change, or maybe something they don't want to do, storytelling is the way to get them there. And it's especially effective in your marketing. So a couple of things of homework for you here. When you're looking to start telling your own story and improve your marketing, I would encourage you to use your own voice and be yourself. Absolutely 100%. Do not try and be somebody that you're not. It's not going to come across as authentic. I got extra points for using the word authentic in every keynote at NAR. So check. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Telling stories is vulnerable. It's hard. Sometimes it requires us to put on field pants. We don't like them. They're uncomfortable. Put them on and get uncomfortable a little bit earlier in the process. You'll find that you will resonate so much more with others. Don't wait until it's perfect. If that's the one thing I can leave you with today, it's don't sit around and think, I'm not ready. I'm not going to do this until I'm ready. You're never going to be ready. Be consistent. Make them feel something with your marketing. Look for the stories. But more than anything, if you didn't write anything down from this session, I want you to look at your marketing from now on and ask yourself, what, so what, now what? Sound good? Thank you.